This is the Wild and Fearless podcast. Join Bec Fox, renowned business leader, coach, and avid adventurer, and go inside the hearts and minds of ordinary women doing extraordinary things. Wild and Fearless, women inspiring legendary dreams.
Hey legends, it's Bec here from Wild and Fearless, and today it is such a privilege and an honour to introduce with me today Mattea Davidson. Mattea is an exceptional human being. We talk about coaching and the difference between teaching and coaching, and how your mindset can be really challenged when you're growing up and as an adult by other people's beliefs or limiting beliefs of what you can achieve. So we really do delve into a lot of really fascinating life coaching strategies, as well as share her love of horses, equestrians, and also her world stage and her championships with horse riding and eventing. A huge welcome to Mattea Davidson here on our Wild and Fearless podcast. It's an absolute honour to have you here, Mattea. And those who don't know you, you're an international horse rider, and you do a lot of eventing and show jumping, and you also have some dressage equestrian events that you attend as well. As well as that, you're also a vet and a mum of a 2-year-old son at the moment. And we've got so much to share, haven't we, and so much to discuss today on our podcast. For those of you who haven't come across Mattea before, she is the most elegant, most beautiful woman, and she is incredibly passionate about horse riding, about coaching, and about teaching others, whether you're young, teenage or older, into the field, and also a very, very passionate vet. And we've been talking behind the scenes for the last few minutes about how important it is to really empower yourself and believe in yourself and your own style of learning. So I'd love to open with that, Mattea, because it's been really fascinating talking about that with you.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. It's
You're
great
welcome.
to be here today. It is. It's something, it's funny because I never thought that I'd necessarily get into the field of learning and coaching. Like if I think back to my 18-year-old self, I wouldn't have thought that. But I think it's something that I've probably evolved from being like a teacher to a coach. So what's interesting for me is everyone's so different, and trying to tap into how that person learns and what that person's actually trying to achieve, because I think it's easy to make an assumption, like say for an example, if it's something completely different like going to the gym, it's easy to make the assumption that a person is going to the gym to get fit. Some people may be going to the gym for a social connection. For sure, there's still the fitness side of it. But it may be an outing, it may be a social connection, it may be a chance to wear their new outfit. Making assumptions as to what people are trying to get out of something then will affect the way that you teach them and coach them. So they won't necessarily get out of it what they need. So I think that that's probably what's evolved for me over time, and it's probably my assumptions that everyone's going to have a lesson because they want to get better.
Improve.
And it's not necessarily true. And I think there's no right or wrong there. It's about, at the end of the day, what that person wants to get out of it, and you're trying to facilitate that.
Yeah. And you're talking about when you're a child, how there's a lot of assumptions made about you and your style of learning, and that you were quite a hyperactive child and a bit disruptive in class. And many people would sort of, you said people who are in guide, very much a guide model and a teacher model for you, would actually limit your beliefs. Do you want to talk about that a bit more?
Yeah, and I think that again, I think that that's done not with any malice. I think that it's maybe them not understanding different learning styles. I was pretty disruptive as a kid and used to get in trouble a lot, and my mum was a teacher at the school, and she would often go past whatever classroom I was in, and I'd always be sitting on the chair outside the classroom.
Hi, Mum.
And I think I just, I was bored. The flow of the day went really slowly, and I think so. How I try and use that for myself now when I'm coaching is trying to tap into how people learn, and to basically utilise that to give them the best lesson or whatever it is at the time. So it's unfortunate that I had those experiences, and people won't...
And fortunate too, because you learn from them.
Unfortunate, yes. So, and that's what I was going to say. So it's unfortunate, but it's fortunate that I I kept chipping away, I suppose, and wasn't, I suppose, willing to believe or accept what they were saying was true, because if I did, then I was accepting that was the situation it was going to be, and I wasn't comfortable with that. So,
well, you never become a vet, and you never become an elite horse rider, because a lot of that has got around mindset and belief in yourself, and also being able to push away other people's opinions that are limiting, and actually harnessing on those who are actually championing you and actually giving you the steps that you need to move forward.
Yeah, and I think it's exactly right. It's difficult to push those away, especially if it's people that are close to you, because certainly, the family I was brought up in, you were respectful of older people, and there were certain, ways that you were meant to act, and I think those things are good. Like, I think having manners is very important. But at the end of the day, the only person that really knows what you're like is yourself.
Yes.
So I think, you do have to keep pushing back at that. And I think we are getting better at understanding the way that kids learn, but I still think we've got a long way to go, because the traditional learning system just doesn't work for every mind.
For sure. Sure. Yeah. So how did you, in leaps and bounds going forward, how did you graduate from school leaver and get into vet? Like, how was that big movement for you? You're saying earlier you weren't very academic, so tell me, it's not luck. You don't become a vet because you're lucky, or you somehow you open up a cereal box and there it was, a ticket for a vet school. How did you actually evolve that and make that happen for yourself?
Yeah, well, it's funny because there was actually one point where I'd gotten into science at university, and I was doing that, and I didn't enjoy it that much. It was all very broad. I then went and did applied science at Gatton, and you could do different subjects, and I found that a little bit more interesting. The plan was always to get into vet, and I was doing those things to try and help me get across, and I actually went to, so that was at UQ I was at, and many people that have been to UQ have been to the toga parties they have at the RE.
Even I've been to the toga parties.
It was a good social function. I was there at the beginning of O Week, and I had caught up with a girl had gone to the same school as me. She was a year ahead, I think, and she'd gotten into vet, and she was telling me how she went about it, and I thought, if she can do it, there's no reason why I can't.
Absolutely.
So she gave me some really good advice, and I followed that. And I have to say, I really found the first 6 months of doing vet hard, because it was, it just sort of was theory and not that interesting. And I'd just finished a job where I'd been riding horses, and I probably wasn't in the right headspace to be doing that sort of heavy slog studying. But my husband, who we weren't married at the time, but was really good about just saying, just keep having a go, and what have you got to lose? And I think that that's important for lots of things, because you're always going to have those times where things aren't enjoyable.
Yeah, absolutely. Things are tough.
Yeah, they're tough, and you have to sacrifice a lot, and I had friends out riding and doing things that I wanted to do, and that made me, miserable, because I wanted to be a part of that. But I was trying to look at the bigger picture and the long-term plan that I had, and now I can look back and go, that's a good thing. But
absolutely.
Having people around you, I suppose, that back you and say, just keep going when you're through, when you're in the thick of it, is really helpful and important. And
what happens if you don't have that? What do you think? You look for it, or you just got to be... We hear a lot about grit and determination these days. It's a bit more than that, though, isn't it? Because you clearly knew what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
You were prepared to take zigzags to get there.
Yeah.
And then even when you landed, even though it wasn't probably the right time, and that, all these friends are doing extraordinary eventing and, propelling their eventing forward, and you're sitting there, studied around a desk and at the study table.
Yeah.
What is it you really...
that you use?
Yeah,
like I think... I asked my husband last night, I said, if you're going to describe me, or how would that be? And he just used one word, and that was determined. And I think that I've had that, and I think it's that hunger for wanting to do something, and I always wanted to be good at that, and I wasn't willing to let, it probably comes back, I wasn't willing to let people who didn't believe in me define what I was going to do.
I love it.
And I think it's just keep pushing, and it's being comfortable with being uncomfortable, if that makes sense.
Oh, totally.
You just have to keep pushing, and, you know, it's like being in the trenches, I suppose. You just have to keep moving forward and trying to build on that, and eventually you get out of it. But I think that was me accepting that and it's not the path that everyone takes, and it's hard when your friends aren't doing the same thing and they don't feel the same way, because they can, you know, they go, it's just easy, just stop doing it.
But it is easy to stop doing it, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's quite the opposite. And I love that, getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, because that's when you know you're really digging in.
Yeah.
And also, this too will pass.
Yeah.
Because it always does. Like, we all have tough times in our life, whether it be through study or relationships. It will pass.
Yeah.
And it's about sticking there and believing in yourself and knowing where you're going. And as you say, being really hungry for the outcome. And even a university degree, 4 years vet science?
5 years vet
5
science,
years,
and 2 years science.
It is over like that, you know, in your lifetime.
Yeah, it is.
And so it's about bearing down and having that tenacity, and
just
good on
have
you.
a go. Yeah.
So I find your life fascinating. It's something we haven't really tapped into yet, and probably because we pre-started our conversation before we clicked the recording, I've realised that, and sorry to the visitors and guests who are listening. But you are an extraordinary vet, and you've got your own vet practice that you're running, as well as being a mother of one beautiful child, and also competing at a very world stage, you know, international stage. Tell us about how you juggle that, and how your life is day to day at the moment.
I think I had to get comfortable with not having much sleep at the beginning.
Comfortable being uncomfortable again?
Yeah, exactly. There's lots of scenarios like that. I think and again, it's probably things that people have said to me along the way. Like, I remember there was one of the team selectors who had said to me, you know, if you don't make it in this sport by the time you're 25, you're never going to.
Wow.
And the comment wasn't directed at me. It was just a comment that he was making, and I'd heard it, and I sort of thought, it's difficult, like, doing anything with horses costs money, and we all know that. And my parents weren't in the position where they could just finance the whole lot like that. They certainly were very helpful, but there were others that you're competing against that are in a totally different position. And I think I had to make the decision early on. I was either going to accept that in terms of, or just
accept
be
that belief
passive and go, well, it is what it is, and I can't do anything about it, or I could do something about it and not go, well, they're in that situation, so they get to do it. I'm in this, so I can't.
Only the privileged can, vet horse ride.
So I had to find a way, and that was part of the reason why I did vet science, because I couldn't afford to buy the horses that I needed for that top level competition. So I wanted to learn how to breed them and to be able to, manage them, because that's an expensive part of it as well.
And that takes time. Before you know it, 25 years has clicked over.
Yeah, I know. It does. It takes time. And I think I wanted to understand the whole process and be able to manage the whole process. And I just thought, I went and did that. So by the time I finished uni, I was 24. And I'd finished school, like when I finished school, I was 16. So I'd then been at uni all that time. And I thought, well, I either have a go and try and make this happen now, or I go, well, because I haven't done it because I'm 25, it's not going to happen. I think, and again, it's that person's perception and it's their opinion, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's true.
Or it doesn't matter.
It doesn't actually matter. And I think it's those comments which are hard, especially if they're people you respect. You've really got to be selective. You can hear it, but you have to be selective with what you take on board and protect yourself from that, because there's going to be lots of negative comments along the way.
And clearly they went right.
No, and the thing is, again, it comes down to people. The only person that really knows what you're capable of is yourself. And I think that's that's something that's always stuck with me, and something that I know that I can do well is I can work hard. And when other people give up and want to go to bed or whatever, I can keep going.
Yeah.
So when things get hard, I've always got that to rely on.
Yep.
And that gives me some comfort because I know I don't give up easily.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. So
there's that determination coming through. Your husband's quite right. Very determined.
Yeah.
Who needs sleep? Who needs sleep anyway? It's overrated.
Sometimes it's a good thing. Sometimes it probably makes things a little difficult. But yeah.
You've had a lot of experiences in your life that even more so, like you had a major fall.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about that. I know I'd love to unpack this a bit more, but you broke your back in how many places?
So I fractured 7 vertebrae.
Yes.
And it was a bit of a freak accident.
Yep.
And I think it's just one of those things, like things happen, and that's why they're called an accident. It wasn't a piece of gear malfunctioned, it broke.
Oh, wow.
So then I was on course and the horse galloped off, and I ended up falling off, and that's what happened.
Yeah.
But I think, at the end of the day, it's pain. Like that's what you're dealing with, the pain and of the physical injuries and the setback that it causes. And
how long was that? That must have been months of recovery and
yeah, I probably got back on a bit sooner than what I was meant to. But yeah, it was really frustrating. Like I couldn't hold my head up. I couldn't hold my head up without it being in a brace because the muscles they'd basically torn.
Wow.
So I wasn't able to do that. So it's that feeling
of... been a close miss.
Yeah, I think they said I was lucky.
Yeah.
But I suppose at the end of the day, the feeling... probably the biggest emotion I had is that feeling of vulnerability. And I think it's being vulnerable, especially if you're someone that is normally pretty sort of stoic and just keeps going, that's really hard. So that's probably the emotion I struggled with the most. Not just being vulnerable because something's happened, but like even just walking through a shopping centre, you're not aware of how close people are until you've got an injury like that.
Yeah.
Because suddenly you're very protective and walking across the road or because you can't turn your head around. So I suddenly had I think whenever those sort of things happen to you, you have a better appreciation for people that are worse off.
Yeah.
So even though it was something that happened, I was very lucky and I'm able to do what I want to do now, it gives you an appreciation of people that are in situations that won't necessarily get better. And that's been important for me because you can think you understand those things, but I think in terms of being a mum and coaching, it's trying to relate to people and have that empathy, I suppose, because especially when someone's hurt, I think, or they're vulnerable, they just want to be heard.
Absolutely.
At that point in time and acknowledged, and often nothing can be done. But I think that it's just being heard and being seen.
And supported.
It makes a big difference to that person.
Yeah.
So I try to use those experiences to look at things like that.
Do you find that having those experiences to bring out a lot more empathy towards your own life and a bit more gratitude? Do you feel it changed you in some way?
It's a funny thing, like when I had that accident, I had lots of people tell me how lucky I was that it wasn't worse. And it's for sure I was lucky, and I thought, well, I was also unlucky that the gear broke in the first place.
Exactly.
So I think that's sort of the glass half full, glass half empty thing. It depends on the day. If you're having a rough day, well, you think you're unlucky. If it's a better day, then you go, well, I'm lucky it wasn't worse.
Yeah.
But I do think for sure having empathy and understanding, and especially as a coach, it's important because you don't know what that person's had going on in their day. You don't know what's happening in their relationships. And like a lot of people I coach are adult riders and they're doing it for fun and of course they want to be safe, but they may have had a hard week at work, and it's knowing when to push and back off too, because you may be there part of the week that is a bit of fun and a bit of banter, and that gives them that release.
Yeah, absolutely.
And relief too, probably.
Yeah.
So I think it's just being more aware of what people's needs are, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really awesome.
So.
And so you do a lot of coaching now, don't you? You coach a lot of women, men, young teenagers. I know you do a lot with aspiring eventers and people who want to be on that world stage as well.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit more about that and
Yeah.
how you landed with both feet in that.
Yeah, it's one of those things that just sort of evolved. I got involved with organising squad schools for our state eventing squads. I then got accepted on, it's called the Competitive Edge program. So it's run by Equestrian Australia under the banner of like Sports Australia.
Oh, fantastic.
So there's a representative in each state, and it's basically trying to, it does multiple things, but it's also trying to support young riders in the pathway, because to sort of go through the levels and have that mentorship and develop those riders. And I think a lot of sport, like there's the teaching side of it, which is the practicalities of, you need to do this, we need to fine-tune this. It's a skill set, that's right. But and we know with all sports, there's so much of it that is mental.
Mindset, exactly.
And mindset. Yep. And doesn't matter what sport it is. It can be rugby.
Absolutely.
Like I've listened to lots of podcasts with different coaches in different disciplines. And I think the earlier you can tap into that and you get people aware of that and working on that process, the better they will be. And it's even, like at the end of the day, it's riding horses, and I acknowledge that. But it's how that will actually help them in their life.
Absolutely. Everything's, everything's transferable. How you learn, how you approach things, how you approach a jump.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's all of that. And it's, we were talking about fear and managing people's emotions. And fear is such an interesting emotion, because you see people at their rawest, because fear brings in that sort of fight or flight, and people often aren't aware of what they're doing when they're fearful. They just do it.
They just do it. It's instant.
It's just instant, because they either want to get out of there or they arc up, and that being able to work people through that emotion is really interesting, because
really powerful.
It's powerful, and it gets them thinking about themselves, and that may be something like that fear that they transfer from riding, maybe something else, like a fear for going to a job interview.
Absolutely.
Or a fear with making new friends, or whatever it is. And that's what I like as a coach, because you're getting to have a small part in their life, a small part in their week, or whenever it is, and it's a skill they may learn that transfers over to another part of their life.
All facets of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're the same human in the same shell with the same mind, and it's just different obstacles and different resources that we're tapping into.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
It's because it's a comment that's often made with people. They say, why would you bother spending money on horses? Why would you, spend all that time doing that?
Yeah.
And to me, it's just like, it doesn't have to be horses. It can be whatever.
Yeah.
But it's just life at the end of the day, and you're experiencing something.
Yeah. And you're growing, aren't you?
And you're growing, and a lot of people won't ride after they leave school, because the practicalities of it is hard, but the experiences that they learn when doing that, and looking after a horse, and managing them when they're unwell, and all of those things. There's not many sports that teach those skills and managing those emotions.
And it's developing a relationship. A horse is another energy that you have to develop a relationship with and get along with.
Yeah.
And talk about teamwork. There's nothing like a horse and a rider. It's complete compatibility and teamwork.
Yeah.
There's so much you can learn riding horses. Yeah.
Well, and probably the thing for me, like personally, when working with animals, is that they can't lie.
Yes.
And that's what I like and appreciate with them, because if they're fearful of something, if they're excited, if they're cranky,
you know.
And it's
their body language is and
it's
so obvious.
It's true. It's very true. They can't hide that.
Yeah.
So I find that really refreshing, and being able to, work with animals in that context, it's quite interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. I love horses. I grew up with horses and I love being around horses, and I believe any animal teaches you about responsibility, about taking care. It definitely teaches empathy and love and all the other things, and a bit of, they teach you and guide you in so many ways.
Yeah.
For the rest of your life, without a doubt.
And it's for me, it's always been a privilege to have animals. It hasn't been a right. It's something that I feel it still amazes me that you can teach a 500 kilogram animal to do what you want to do when you want to do it, and it's done because they want to, not because they have to.
If they didn't want to, they wouldn't.
They wouldn't do it.
No.
And that's really cool, and you're doing that without, your communication is through, essentially it's body language because they're aids.
Absolutely.
And that's, you sort of can't fake that, and that's probably, for me personally, that's what amazes me and keeps me going, because they're different conversations you have with different animals because they have different reactions and different personalities. So you never stop learning, and I like that because every horse, every day, it's a challenge. It's always different. It's never
absolutely
never the same. So,
and it's like a windy day, they're a bit more ratty and a bit more skittish, and
and it's
different personalities. How many horses are you riding at any one time? Or competing with?
At the moment, I'm riding between 7 and 8 a day.
Wow.
And so I do that in the morning, and then in the afternoon I go and do vet work, or I go and coach. So that's my schedule at the moment.
And your vet work is still around the breeding program, isn't it, that you tapped into a bit earlier? So are you working for others, or are you developing your own breed for, the ultimate event horse, or what are you doing?
So we have our own stud, but I do breeding work for our horses and also for outside horses.
Okay, great.
So with performance horses, you can use frozen semen, so it can be from anywhere in the world, any stallion in the world.
That's incredible.
And we do embryo transfer, so from a competition mare, and then you can put it into another mare so that the mare you're competing can continue on.
Gee, that's incredible.
So that's
a surrogate mare.
Yeah, it's a surrogate mare, and I still find, the sciencey side of me finds that very cool.
Exciting.
That you can take a 7-8 day embryo out of one horse and transfer it into another, and it can continue to grow.
It's incredible.
And that it's stable enough, and that it survives
that
that
process.
process.
Supports the pregnancy, and then the nurturing of the young foal.
Yeah.
It's all about, it's just absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's so that I find really cool, and I still do that when you have a successful ultrasound. So when there's a pregnancy, when you check them at day 14, that's a cool feeling because you can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. So your life is quite amazing, and I think a lot of people sitting here listening are going, wow, you ride 7 to 8 horses in the morning. You also care for 7 or 8 horses or more. You've got a stud. Yep. How many horses are on your stud?
Well, we do have staff too, I have to admit.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, that's good.
Yes. At our place, we would have at least 50 horses there at a time.
Wow, that's a huge stud.
Some days are a bit crazy.
But you're doing everything you love. So it doesn't. So crazy is good, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the thing is, it doesn't, of course, some days are harder than others, and when you're out in the pouring rain, especially with the recent floods, it can be, that can be tough. But I think it doesn't. It's just it varies on what sort of job you do. So that's what we have to deal with, and that's just part of it.
Yeah.
But there's, if I write down some days what I do from the start of the day, which is collect a stallion, then I give a lesson, and then I ride a breaker, and then, I have a young son, and then give him lunch, and then, it's just so
full on
varied. And that's what I enjoy about it, is that variety and learning different things, because it's just constantly evolving.
Every day is new. Every day is,
Yeah.
Super exciting. Yeah. Well, if you could say anything to anyone, you're going to have lots of listeners. People will be listening to this maybe in a decade's time, and the thing about these podcasts, they are timeless.
Yeah.
It's what would you advise, or what sort of little golden nugget have you got to share today?
For it, yeah.
Yeah, for this podcast.
I think there is a really famous Winston Churchill quote which I have always liked, and it's along the lines of, I don't think I'm going to quote it correctly, but it's along the lines of continuous effort is better than, or will always get you there over intelligence or anything else.
Yeah, so true.
I think it's just like the quote's basically saying, keep having a go, and for sure there'll be times that are tough, but you never know, the next day it may be a little bit easier, or a couple of days later it may be a little bit easier. So if you can just keep going a little bit longer, you may get that breakthrough. Maybe you're an actor and you're waiting for a role, whatever it is, just keep having a go, and you're probably closer than you think.
Exactly. That reminds me, just visualise a little person in a cave. There's a really good art piece where he's chipping away, and one person who's chipping away at a tunnel gives up and starts dragging his little spade behind him and starts walking back out to the entrance, failed. And the other person's chipping away and they're only literally millimetres away from breaking through. And that's what it's all about, isn't it? Every day, just keep turning up, just keep on doing it, and always know and always believe that end goal is there. You may have to zigzag to get there. It doesn't matter. The journey is part of the journey. It will be what it will be. But it's never luck. It gets you there. It's always about having great coaches around you and believing in yourself, right?
Yeah, no, I like that.
Yeah. Well, you said it.
It still sounds
I'm just
good.
capturing what you said.
No, that's
Mattea,
great.
it's been absolutely brilliant having you on the show today. It's been an absolute privilege.
Thank you for having me.
I know everyone who's been sitting back will be just thinking, oh, wow, that was just so awesome. So thank you so much for sharing all your wonderful insights.
It's great to be a part of such an awesome group of speakers, and I can't wait to hear what the others have to say.
It is definitely the wild women that we're attracting. The women inspiring legendary dreams are that, but also it's the community we're establishing, like women supporting women. And that's like just, it's solid. It's just the foundation and the project itself is just absolutely brilliant. So thank you. You're very much part of it. You're very much part of the foundation core, being number 6 episode. Is that right, guys? So, it's absolutely fantastic having you on board, and thanks for saying yes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All
Thank
right.
you very much.
You're welcome. See ya.
See ya. Actually, now I remember what the quote was. I was trying to remember.
What is it?
It's continuous effort, not strength or intelligence, is the
that's
key to
gold.
unlocking your potential. And I got this... it's a print that I got. It was just, I think it was at South Bank or something. It was years ago, and it wasn't an expensive print, and it stuck because I think it was, I was like, I can either accept that I'm never going to get there because I don't have the money and I don't have the family support or whatever, or I can at least give everything a go and know that I've had a crack.
You've had a good crack.
Yeah.
And it'll lead you somewhere.
Yeah, and I think it's, and this friend that I was talking to on the way down here will just, she's a good girlfriend and she's a good sounding board, and she was saying this podcast that she'd listened to, and it was to do with this guy in America, and it said life will work it out. Like it will work out how it's meant to work out. I don't think it means don't do anything.
No, if you do nothing, it will work out to be nothing.
Yes.
Yeah.
But some things, you can
aspire
really,
to nothing. Some people do aspire to nothing.
Yeah.
It's like, great, good on you.
Yeah. And if that's what floats their boat, then that's fine. But I think that you have to accept sometimes that there's just shitty things that happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just...
It's an unrealistic thing, it won't.
Well, exactly. And
when you least expect it, you fall off a freak accident and break your back.
Yeah. And I do think if you can accept that, and I think that that's something that I'd like to teach our son and hopefully our children, is that you learn that, because I feel like that's what society's trying to buffer.
Oh, totally.
Children.
Absolutely. Protect everyone and stay safe.
Yeah, and don't get hurt. And it's not the reality of life. It doesn't matter where you live. Exactly. Like even living in Brisbane, which is essentially a are safe compared to other parts of the world.
Exactly.
You can get flooded. You can
Absolutely. My son got punched in the face last week walking home from the shopping centre.
Oh God!
Just
Jesus.
a guy pulled up in a car and went bang.
Yeah.
Just punched him smack in the face, bang.
For no reason.
No reason.
Yeah, and that
and it happens. Yeah, in daytime.
I think that then the problem is you then start asking that question. Well, why me? And it's just why
life.
Not you? Like that's
exactly. You're just one random person and a nice addict drove past.
Yeah.
And thought, here's a skinny teenager. I'm going to
punch them.
I've had a bad day. I'm going to punch them.
And I think if rather than like for sure, there's certain things that we can control from happening, like vaccines and whatever, but I think that if we can actually work more on coping when things happen,
exactly,
that would be
and how
more
we
beneficial.
internalise it, and how we actually, we're not a victim. We are it's just another piece of the life cycle.
Yeah, because I think it's that, like that's what we need to teach kids.
Yep.
Because that's what helps them deal with things when bad things happen, which is, it's actually just life.
Yeah.
Like it's part of living, because you can live a safe little bubble and say you never have a relationship, or you never get heartbroken, or you never make friendships or lose friendships.
And they're always going to happen.
And it happens.
It's the only way to grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they may have something happen that affects them, and then that affects you. And a good friend of mine passed away, I think 3 years ago now, and she was the same age, and she got meningococcal and died very quickly.
Wow.
It was all a shock. Like she'd been very healthy and well,
Yep.
and went overseas, got to London for a conference, and then passed away that night that she got there. And we were all in shock. Because she was this really vivacious, healthy, person that did a lot, and we weren't expecting it. So it was a big shock. But she'd said, like we'd spent a lot of time together, and she said to me one day, because I was talking to her about a client relationship or something, and she said, all good things come to an end. And I think it's just that acceptance of sometimes we cling on to things for so long because we don't want the change or the reality of what's happened.
Yeah.
But and she didn't mean it in a way like, don't care.
Yeah.
But she was like, rather than looking at things when they end as that being bad, enjoy it for what it was when it was there.
Exactly.
And it's funny that I remember that about her, because she lived this really full life. And I was
then
like,
it came to an end like that.
And it just came to an end. And I thought, but she would have been so matter of fact about it. She would have been like, oh, well, it was really good.
Had a blast, have no regrets.
And this happened. And I was like, well, it's really appropriate. And I think, again, if you're in that situation, enjoy it for what it was and celebrate it for what it was, rather than, and this is always easier said than done, but try and look at it in that way rather than, you've lost that thing.
Yeah, exactly. I think people hold on to what they've lost instead of moving forward.
Yes.
It's like an attachment. And I think some people call it like you have to detach yourself, or the detachment theory.
Yeah.
Because you hold on to the past, and you can't live in the present and hold on to the past. It's just impossible. Or you can, but it's a very depressing state.
Yes.
So
yeah, it is, and
being able to accept it and let go and go, thanks for all the learnings, thanks for all the times. Now I'm taking my next step.
Yeah. And
life will go on.
Life will go on, and it's like I've had some friends have really hard things happen. They've had cancer, they've been kicked in the head, they've just you'd think, why wouldn't you just give up?
Yeah.
Or you could understand if they just gave up.
Yeah.
But they just keep having a go, and I think that's it's inspiring, and it's like, well, what's the alternative?
What is the alternative? It's pretty depressing, isn't it?
It's pretty depressing.
That nothingness we just spoke about.
Yeah.
It's
just
nothingness.
So
no, keep rocking up.
It's interesting.
Mattea, before we leave, it would be remiss of me to ask, and I'm sure everyone's sitting on the edge of their seats wanting me to ask this question, but how do we get in touch with you if we're wanting to learn how to, improve our horse riding skills or our horse-mastership, or even just experience being around an animal? How do they get in touch with you?
So the easiest thing would be just to Google Davidson Equestrian, and you will come to our website, and all the contact details, phone numbers, email is on there. And we also have a Facebook page and Instagram, which is also Davidson Equestrian.
Fantastic. So easy.
Yep.
So easy. Thanks again. It's been awesome talking to you. And yeah, we're looking forward to maybe, you never know, episode 2 with Mattea in about 12 months' time. What do you think?
Yep. Sounds great.
Sounds
you,
awesome.
Bec.
You're welcome.
Cheers.
Hey legends, I hope you're really enjoying the show. We love bringing it to you. Please support us, subscribe, like all our social media platforms, and please reach out and donate through buymeacoffee.com/wild and fearless. We really appreciate it. Have an awesome day.